It's sensational to have a namesake on the show, but the difference between Mark Sweeney and me is he's a sensational putting instructor, and I'm more of a golf swing guy. So, Mark, it's a thrill to finally have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It is my pleasure. Look, the way I see it is putting is low hanging fruit, and anybody can do it, but no one wants to focus on it because we live in this power era. So, before we get into aim points, I want to hit you with this. Because look, I'm in broadcast and there's a bunch of noise on social media about aim points and it's slow, blah, blah. Insert whatever you want over there. We have the originator of aim point on the show here. So I want you to shoot a big hole in some of these wildly misfounded theories, please.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, the first thing people say is it's slow, and interestingly, that came about the first time ages ago, probably 15 years ago, when we were using aim charts still, and the aim charts were a little more difficult. They're very, very accurate, but a little more difficult.
Mhm.
And the Express Read though has been out now for 11 years, so it came out in 2014. And empirically speaking, since 2014, I have yet to see a single video ever of a player going overtime with their read from using AimPoint ever. So
Mhm.
people talk about it, and I'm like, okay, well, show me one single video. So of every tournament, of every round that it's shown on, I have yet to see a single one. Occasionally, they show, a Keegan Bradley video where they say, well, it took too long, but if you time it, it was 24 seconds. So it's still significantly lower, and so there's no evidence of that. And then I went out to Bay Hill a few months ago and timed every player's reads for on four different holes one day, just to say, okay, on average, is it slower? Is it faster? Is it the same? And first of all, the fastest group off the green, I was on par three there, and the fastest group off the green were two aim pointers, is Morikawa and Bradley, I think,
All
and
right.
they were on and off the green, I think, in 2.5 minutes flat, whereas the average time for players to get on the green and put out and leave was about 4 to 5 minutes. And without using aim point, their standard, players take easily up to 60 seconds, and usually with aim point, it's closer to 30 to 40. And so I can't find any empirical evidence anywhere. Nobody's ever shown me any that says it's actually slower.
Okay, well, my observation is not evidence based. This is just logic. And I've been in the game since, gosh, Moby Dick was a minnow. I'm aging myself here. But the reality is, and I say this to all of the pace of play police, I'm like, if you want to speed up the game, you hit fewer shots. So,
Yeah.
in other words, as you make more putts, you're going to speed up play. You'd agree with that, I guess?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because all the pace of play data is in ShotLink, and so I've gone back and looked through ShotLink and just say, first question is golf actually getting slower?
Mhm.
Because there's an assumption there that rounds are getting slower and slower, and if you look at the data over the last 7 to 8 years, it is actually not getting slower. Depending on what year you start, you could make a case for it's a little bit faster or a little bit slower. When I say by that is, 2 minutes slower in the last 7 years. But if you look back 8 years, it's 2 minutes faster. And so it's really not changing. What really makes rounds slow is bad weather, first of all, right?
Mhm.
You get wind, you get rain, and you're going to get slow rounds. No way around that. But the average round isn't changing at all. And then if you dig into the rounds, the longest time between shots, it predictably would be if there's a penalty involved. But other than penalties, the slowest time between two shots in the same group is off the tee. And the second slowest is in the fairway or in the rough, obviously, depending on the lie. And the fastest time between shots is on the putting green. So if you're looking for low-hanging fruit on speeding up play, the putting green is not the place to find it.
I love it. Bringing truth as you always are. Okay,
God
for
forbid, right?
yeah. For our global audience who does not, everyone knows aim points. No one knows the OG, the originator of the thing. Tell us about Mark Sweeney, the brief bio, please. You're a top
Uh,
50 golf instructor, legendary. Give us the backstory.
well, the backstory was I was just an amateur golfer. I loved playing a ton of golf, and I was working in finance, and had quit my job in New York after 9/11 and moved to Florida. And I was just bored. And I was
Mhm.
just playing a ton of golf, and I'd never made any putts. I never made anything outside 6 feet. And I asked my golf instructor at the time, how do I read greens better? And he said, just do it more. And I didn't accept that as a
The
good answer.
mathematician in you didn't like that, did you?
I was like, well, that's not what you tell me with my full swing, but so I didn't really accept that as an answer. And I had a background in software development, and so just as a hobby, I started screwing around and trying to put together how to write a software program that predicted break. And it only took 2 or 3 months to do. And when I tested it, it worked dramatically better than I expected. I expected it to be okay, and it was actually really, really good. And then pretty quickly, I got in front of CBS and the PGA Tour and was showing it to them for the virtual line that we had on Golf Channel for about 6 years.
Which you won an Emmy Award for.
Yes, yes, won an Emmy. That was Golf Channel's first Emmy, just for the
Mhm.
record.
Yeah, like I'm still aiming for one of those, but we'll leave that aside. Yeah, but
Yeah, so it just started as something that I was intrigued by, and then it worked particularly well. The software worked particularly well, and then from the TV product, it forced me to get the math perfect, basically, including wind, grain, any situation, because I had to predict any putt on any golf green on any golf course with any player of any length, and had to be accurate to 2 inches. And so once that was correct, then that evolved into a teaching method, which was okay, how do we use this as players without a computer or without laser scans of the green?
incredible. I'm fascinated about it by it. I'll say this: I know just enough to be dangerous, so I'm glad to have you on the show because I'm going to learn something now too. So I guess, well, I guess we've got the inspiration for it, and the inspiration was you just didn't read greens very well.
Yeah, that was
So
it. And nobody could answer the question how to get better other than do it more or it's a God-given talent. If you don't have it, too bad. And I didn't accept either one of those.
well, here's my experience with it. And again, this is sort of drive by, so forgive me. This is opinionated and sort of like just personal data collection mentally over the years. I've been teaching golf since 1996. And I would say golfers to this day still, except if you're aim pointing, you will habitually underread a putt.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
are you feeling where I'm going here?
Yeah, well, absolutely, because your eyes just don't pick up the true break. And even, I've worked with tour players where I do an aim point read and say, here, aim here. And they almost to a person say, that can't be right. That's too high. And then they hit it and it goes in. They're like, huh, show me that again. So
Mhm.
even very experienced golfers don't visually see the true break. Some dudes, there are a few. There are some that I've tested who are great natural green readers who came up with the exact same break that aim point did, but not many. Very few.
Well, it's along those lines too. Like I use that perfect putter aid, which is kind of like almost a stimp meter and it rolls the ball down the green.
Yeah.
You put that down there on a line for a golf and you say, okay, aim this where you think the ball should roll. It's always rolling low. And then they move and they move and they move. Then you
Yeah.
aim them down that line and they're like, this is not right. But in a strange way, it liberates them because it makes the whole play bigger. And that's something I'm always striving for.
Yeah, and one thing we know about, green reading concepts in general is an underread. I mean, you never make an underread. Underreads can't go in. Overreads can go in. If you're a little higher and a little softer and the ball's coming in at a decent to slower speed, you can get away with a high read. You can never get away with an underread. And the other thing that the physics shows us is that when you underread a putt, it triples your error. So if you underread a putt by a foot, it'll miss the hole by 3 feet. And
Oh,
if you overread a putt by foot, it'll miss the hole by 6 inches. So you get half the error on the overread side and triple, and sometimes more than triple the error on the low side, especially when the greens are fast and steep.
well, that's the thing. And I say to people when they lag putt as well, that if you get something low, it's never rolling closer to the hole. It's always rolling further away. So by extension, you're making your next putt longer, which lowers your chances.
Yeah, and so and sometimes your underreads look worse than they really are. Like I said, you might only underread a putt by 2 inches and you miss by a cup and a half to 2 cups. And so it looks like a horrendous underread, but it really wasn't that bad. It just magnifies the error if you miss on the low side. And so as you're saying, obviously in lag putting, you want to read the most possible break you can and even play more after that. Like whatever you think the most possible break the ball could possibly do, play more than that, and you'll end up with much better results.
Fellow North Carolinian, I think he's from North Carolina, Henry Diana, I'll never forget. Maybe he's not from North Carolina, so strike that from the record. I was calling him Tom Hoagie, final round Pebble Beach a few years ago, and Tom was making it from all over the joint, which he normally doesn't do. So after 16, I said to Henry, I'm like, what's the thing? And he goes, I am making him put the widest possible line that he feels like he can still make it. Then we add some. So essentially, we're
Yeah,
picking the
same
biggest,
exact
widest
concept.
line. Yeah.
Yeah. As high as
Anyway,
I would say, play so much break that you're about to throw up from how much it looks like literally to the point where you're like, this is ridiculous how much break I'm playing, and you usually were never missed by more than 6 inches to a foot on the high side.
okay, let's help people because in the back of my mind, I've got the philosopher that is Fulton Allen, you know him well,
Yeah.
who once said to me, he goes, in my 40 something years in the game, I've never seen a ball fall up a hill. So,
No.
okay.
Facts.
Right. So that's facts. Let's go to it. The mechanics of aim points, because people who don't know about it will see folks on TV and they see them holding the fingers out, and there's amounts of variation in the arm, and they're looking at the hole and they're standing around with their feet. Talk to us basically about AimPoint Express and sort of how one goes about it, please.
Yeah, I mean, so most people don't understand the fundamental concepts of green reading to begin with.
Mm.
And so AimPoint just takes, the correct fundamental concepts, which is what's controlling the break is the biggest slope in the middle third of the putt.
Okay.
Okay, not the first part of the putt, not the end of the putt, where a lot of people get wrong. It's from a physics point of view and a math point of view, it's the middle third of the putt, and you need your biggest slope there controls the break. Whether it's early in the middle third or late in the middle third or wherever it is, that number is what the break will be. And we can, it's a little unintuitive, and we could talk a little bit about that if you want. So what AimPoint Express does is when you see people feeling the slope twice, they're trying to find the biggest slope because that is mathematically what controls the break.
Okay.
And then the fingers are a conversion tool. So what the fingers do magically is that if you're putting across a 2% slope and you hold up two fingers, it creates a launch angle off your eyes basically that matches the physics of a golf ball breaking on a golf green.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever number you feel in percentage, if you hold up the same fingers, that is matches the physics. And then the only thing we're adjusting for is speed. So green speed, ball speed, uphill, downhill, and that's managed with arm bend. So a two is a two, but a two on a stimp 14 would be a different arm bend than on a stimp 10, let's say.
And before I get to, because I'm still fascinated about this middle third thing, and I'm wanting to learn here. But before we go there, like the arm bending and the feeling on the greens with the feet, that is a learned skill. That is not innate, right? The top golfers are practicing this stuff all the time.
Yeah, they do practice it. People are surprisingly good at picking up slope down to a 0.5% or less. And
Okay.
so, our bodies are so well attuned to stay balanced that we're always adjusting to tilt under our feet. Every time we walk around, we're sensing and adjusting to tilt.
Mhm.
And so all we're doing is saying, learn what 1, 2, 3, 4 feels like. And very quickly, within 20 minutes, usually people are picking up 0.5s. Anybody, even non-golfers. I've taught people who have never touched a golf club and they'll pick up 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 within 20 minutes. And so we're just creating the association of when you feel this feeling, that's a 1% slope. When you feel that feeling, it's a 2% slope. And because it's a measured amount, it's the same on every golf course in the world. It never changes. So it makes it extremely consistent to go to anywhere. It doesn't matter what geography you're in. A two feels like a two,
Okay.
right? And so it doesn't matter whether steep greens or flat greens or optical illusions. You're just sensing, you're feeling if the ball is rolling across this much slope, then it must break a certain amount. It has to, whether you like it or not, it has to.
Okay, a couple questions because when I've tried it, I've never really felt it very much, but maybe I'm not switched on. So what I would always sort of do is I'd hold the putter head like a pendulum from my belly button, and then it would always be tilting one way or the other. And then I'm sort of trying to go, well, that side's lower. Now I can feel something drastic. So here's a asinine question, but forgive me. Do shoes and soles and stuff like that, like you've got different styles of golf shoes, does that make a difference at all?
It can. It depends how you feel slope. And so a lot of things what people get wrong about aim point and feeling slope is it's not necessarily your feet. Like you always say, well, feel the slope in your feet, but we sense slope all the way up to at least your waist. So hips, knees, shins, your quads, your muscles, your ankles, your feet, your toes. I mean, people feel it all kinds of different ways. And so some people don't feel much in their feet, but they obviously feel slope. So if you can go play golf and walk around the golf course without falling down, you are constantly adjusting to slope.
Yes.
The question is, where are you feeling it? And so occasionally we get somebody like you who might say, and it's funny, I've had a few very good athletic golfers who said, well, I don't feel anything in my feet. And the minute I said, okay, well, what about your hip joints or what about your knees? They go, oh, yeah, I got that. And they
Okay.
were just focusing on the wrong part of their body, the wrong joints or whatever. And so that's why you see some different methods out there. Max Homa does the thing where he does a little squat. He's probably feeling it kind of more in his
Yeah.
quads,
Hmm.
whereas I feel my feet and my hip joints. Other people, I've heard players feel it in their knees. I don't feel anything in my knees, but some players say they feel everything in there. So you've really kind of you learn how to individualize it for yourself, but don't get hung up on your feet.
Yeah.
Now, if you feel a lot in your feet, your shoes absolutely make a difference, no question.
Well, I've got kind of knock knees and stuff. And if you watch me giving a golf lesson, My wife's described me. She goes, I look like a dog. I've always got my head like this one as I'm watching golf swings. Um, okay, let's do this because I still want to get back to that middle third thing,
Sure.
which you caught my attention. And I'm like, geez, like I got to mine this further. So here I am. I'm facing a putt at 20 feet and I stand by the ball and then I stand over the middle portion of the putt. And then some folks will go stand by the hole. I've
Yeah.
always been inclined to sort of build a read off the final portion of what the ball's going to do. And then I see where the ball wants to go in and then I work off that. But you're saying the biggest influence is in the middle third of the putt?
Yeah, it actually is, it is the controlling section. So let's start the ball. The ball doesn't matter. Makes no difference what's going on the ball. There's no, and this is unintuitive also, but there is not a single situation where you need the slope in the first third of the putt. Assuming you're not checking for a double break or something, but
I
there's
guess
not a
that's a
single.
I guess that's a ball speed thing, right? Because as the ball's going
Yeah.
fast, it's gravity's got less influence on it.
Well, it just, if it's steep in the beginning and flat at the end, one third of the way is the number. If you read it earlier than that and pick up a bigger slope, you'll miss high every single time.
Okay.
So there's not a single situation where I tell you you need to feel or pick up slope in the first third. None, zero. And I can prove that. I can go off the green and we can putt from the collar and putt from the fringe and say ignore the first third and the read will still be right every single time. So again, people, that's a hard thing to accept until you actually do it. And then you're like, okay, I got it. That's just the way it works. Even though it doesn't seem right, that is the way it works mathematically. So you
So
can always forget the ball. Anybody feeling the ball, even guys who are standing over the ball and taking practice swings, that's a potential misread because
okay.
what's happening to the ball does not control the break.
So ostensibly then, folks now, because they're going to be people who want to try this after the show on
Yeah.
YouTube, wherever. So then if you just go to the basically the middle of the putt, you are going to
Well,
get
middle third, not the center of the putt, right? So
okay.
the middle third, on a 20-foot putt, it'd be 7 feet in and 14 feet in, like that whole
Sure.
middle section.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Anywhere in there that is your biggest slope is how much the ball will break.
Hmm.
So if it's early, if it's steep early, you pick up one third of the way in. If it's steep late, you pick up two thirds of the way in. But then we can go on to if you get too close to the hole, that can cause misreads also because the putt's almost over by the time you get to the end of the putt. It's finished,
Hmm.
right? And how the ball goes in the hole, the last, let's say 2, 3, 4 feet, is all set up by the middle third, right? So the
Okay.
trajectory that it arrives the last 3 or 4 feet has already been determined farther back in the putt.
I guess that's why I was probably a decent putter because I just somehow in me just always whatever it was, especially on short putts. I'd heard hold those curling 6 footers a bunch, but
Yeah.
always top pull in the high edge, and I was essentially a defensive putter, even though I putted well.
Yeah.
I
High,
never
high
rolled
and
the thing
slow
at the
would be
hole.
defensive. Yeah.
Yeah, I never rolled the thing at the hole with any speed.
Did you grow up playing on steep greens?
No, but it was windy. There was strangely windy greens, which you would think I'd try
Huh.
to jam the ball in the hole a whole lot more.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, so but when I came to the United States as a young collegian, I was hit with Bermuda grass,
Yeah.
way more slope, less
Yeah.
wind. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it's just I kind of, and I want to get to the grain in a minute.
Sure.
It's like I always went a little higher. And now, as you described that, I'm like, yeah, I was starting the ball way farther left, for argument's sakes, than most of my contemporaries were. And maybe this was me sort of getting a sense for the real AimPoint read before AimPoint was even a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you figured out, however, you did that high and soft works, low and firm does not work, right? And so you figured out to play your defensive higher and softer, they can curl in the top edge. Some people just figure out the breaks better. I have no idea why. And if you ask them how, they say, I don't know. I just see more break or I just play more break, but they can't reproduce it. They can't give that skill to somebody else. And as a coach, and you're a coach, obviously, as a coach, you have to take somebody who does not have the skill of green reading and give it to them. You can't just say, well, here's what I did. It worked great. And they go, I don't know what you're talking about. So how do you give somebody the green reading skill without it? Well, there's a process. What controls break? Biggest slope in the middle third. Go learn how to detect that. We think doing that with your feet is much better than eyeballing it. And then the fingers will convert that into a mathematically correct break. And that way you have a process that's the same every time.
Okay, you kind of called out the coach in me a little bit now, Mark, to be honest with you.
All right,
Because,
let's go.
oh, no, okay, well, yeah, here's the thing, my mea culpa. When I've given putting lessons, again, I'm sort of holistic in my approach and stuff. And then I've heard it countless times from people. They're like, I just don't see that slope.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like it stands out like a sore thumb. So maybe that's innate.
Yeah, well, that's something you learn somehow, some way, but there's not a clear process to train somebody else to see that.
Yeah, well,
You
that's
just can't.
therein lies the problem. So I'm not after
Right.
you now. This is maybe I'm being self-serving here, and that's why I got you on because I'm thinking for the next half of my golf teaching career, even though I'm broadcasting more, I need to add AimPoint to my toolbox of golf teaching skills. And I would venture to say, and I've got you on the show, that most teachers, if they aren't, they should. You'd agree?
Well, I don't know how you possibly teach green reading without aim point, honestly. And I'm not, and I know that sounds really self-serving, but there is no other, there's no other process that you can teach somebody who's never touched a golf club and say, here's what controls break. Here's what you have to figure out. If you get your read wrong, either your slope was wrong or your process was wrong. And with aim point, believe it or not, it's usually not that people get the wrong slope. It's that they feel the slope in the wrong place. And I see this on TV day in and day out, even on tour, even at the Open last week. There's guys feeling at the ball, there's guys feeling at the hole. Those are all mistakes. Those will all cause misreads in certain situations. So it's not that they're feeling the number wrong, they're using the wrong number. So it's like a yardage, right? I mean, green is like a yardage. I need it. Every putt breaks like a number. I just need to know what that number is. I need to get the number in the right place. And if you get that, then it's a very simple skill. It's very easy to apply.
I love you. You're looking at the wrong yardage plate. Yeah, there, young man. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you got the yards to the wrong flag. You just got the or your caddy got the wrong yardage. Okay. And the nice thing about the aim point process is again, if you get it wrong, you can always reverse engineer why it was wrong. Okay, I missed it. Why? Was the slope wrong or did you just feel in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Or, we can when we get to grain, there's some adjustments you have to make for grain. And if you miss that, you can get a misread. It
Yeah,
happens.
before we get to grain, I want to talk to you about uphill and downhill
Sure.
because I will contend until my dying day, and I'm going to die on this hill. That obviously pace over a line. If you're good at judging pace, you're going to eliminate three putt avoidance. To me, is a big number for golfers of all skill stations.
Well, very low hanging fruit.
Yeah, but especially a lot of folks who watch this who aren't maybe elite golfers. So if you can judge distance, you're going to eliminate three putts. Your scores are going to plummet. That's my promise.
Yeah, I think three putts is the lowest hanging fruit for amateur golfers.
Okay. All right. Lovely. Well, I will add that to the notes over here. Now, here's the question about aim point and uphill and downhill.
Hmm.
Because you know what blows my mind is when you have the individual and they've got like 20 feet uphill and they leave it a few feet short, right?
Yeah.
And then the next hole, they got a 20-footer downhill and they got this in the recesses of their mind there and they whack it 6 feet by.
Yeah.
Then the uphill, they will leave short. That just
Yeah.
absolutely makes my eyes want to spout blood. So, can, can we figure out uphills and downhills in percentages as well? Is that a thing?
You can, but it actually doesn't work very well. Downhill works very well, actually. So I can very easily say, it's a 4% downhill. It'll play 40% shorter than you think.
Right.
Uphill is hard because for whatever reason, cognitively, when you tell somebody to hit an uphill putt like it's 27 feet, they hit it 27 feet. They smash it through the hole. And so in my experience, I've never found anybody, I found that's not true. I have one player who could come up with an equivalent distance and be pretty accurate with it. So what I prefer, right? I think one of the issues with speed is people look at distance only. They're like, it's 20 feet uphill, downhill, and they don't really understand how to adjust for the uphill, downhill. So we'll look a lot more at timing, right? So why is an uphill? How is an uphill putt different? The ball gets there faster.
Mm-hmm.
How's a downhill putt? It's slower, right? They call it faster, but the ball actually takes much longer to get there.
Yeah.
That's why downhills break more than uphills because the ball's rolling for longer. And the longer it's rolling, the longer it's breaking for. And so
Mm-hmm.
we do training where we basically time, and we're not trying to memorize anything, but we're trying to feed in a time component, which is here's a long, steep downhill putt. I had one last week at Gaza Ranch. That was 30 feet downhill, really steep. And I said, how long do you guys think this ball will take to get there? And everybody said between 3 and 6 seconds.
Probably
When we
like
putted it, it took
nine.
18 seconds.
How much?
18.
18. Gosh. Okay. Right.
18,
Uh-huh.
right? And so there was no concept of timing. And if you understand timing, then you're saying, well, that ball's got to come off really, really slow because it's going to roll and roll and roll and roll and roll and roll. And so I've had much better results working on the timing side of speed than the equivalent distance side.
Okay, yeah. Wow. I love that. That's a bit of an eye popper as well. I've thought about that, but never really considered that as like a teaching point or a learning point. Um, Along the timing of the putts thing too, and now the aiming, because now let's say I've got this fast downhill or left to right, and I've got the read from my aim point skill, and now I'm a big one for aiming the line on the ball. I wish we'd had that when I was playing golf. I might not be podcasting.
Right.
Um, I think that's a great skill. But then, and I will say to people, hey, use a line on the golf ball. A lot of them don't set it up correctly, but then other folks they'll sort of dig their heels in and go, no, that just looks wrong.
Yeah.
And then they can't get over the fact that factually it's right. They're going with their intuition and their feel.
Yeah.
If I'm aim pointing, is my question, do I have to use a line on the ball given that I kind of know the point that I'm going towards or not?
No, you don't have to. I mean, I'm pretty ambivalent because I get some people who are much better with the line. I get people who are great without the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I care about is can you start the ball where you want to start the ball?
Okay, right.
Like however you want to do it, that's fine. And the people who put the line down and then stand over the ball and say, well, it looks wrong. Well, that's just an optical problem, and you can change that with setup, and which you may or may not want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if they get over the line that they know is correct, but it looks low, they're gonna pull the putt, right? They're subconsciously they're gonna make some adjustment. They're gonna hit it hard or something. And so I like the line if you can do it efficiently, so it's not too disruptive. Somebody who's up and down and up and down and up and down, monkeying with their line. I don't love that. And if they can roll it on the line, that's great. And some people just can't do it or
I
just don't want to do it.
in the 2008 Masters, I connected with my brother on the Sunday morning. He'd missed the cut in Houston, my brother Trevor, and I arrived at the house and there were 3 putters in his bag, which is never a good start.
Never a good sign.
So I looked at this and I said to him, I can help you with your putting. Because I didn't see anything with a stroke, and he'd been on labs and the whole thing and all this data and diving
Yeah.
into the mechanics of it all. And I know Trevor was an aggressive putter. And I'm like at Augusta National, you got to putt defensively.
Yeah.
And so I took him on the green and I put him over the hardest putt on the joint. It's down in the bottom corner of the putting green, breaking down towards the 10th tee.
Oh, I know that putt.
You know the putt, yeah.
Snaps.
Yeah, and it's fast.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, to pick a line for, I want you to pick a spot. I gave him a ball marker, a plastic ball marker, Young Life ball marker. I'm like, put this dot down in the line a couple 3 feet in front of the ball on the line you think you need to run this on. Goes, okay, done it. And then he hits the ball over the mark and the ball misses. So
Yeah.
my question then was like, was that a good putt or a bad putt? And he sort of looks at me and I'm like, well, move your mark if you need to. And so he moves the mark, hits it over the mark the next time and misses again on the low
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
And eventually he moved it to a place where it rolled over, then went in. And I'm like, which one of those were good putts? The reality is they're all good putts because they started
Yeah.
on your line, right?
Yeah. They're all good putts. It's just
Yes.
wrong target.
And then it became, well, all he's got to do is pick his line, commit to the start line, yes or no. Yes, I struck that well. So instead of going, oh, I suck and stuff, it was more just confirmation. Yes, 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 yes. Anyway, it works out well at the end of the week.
Yeah. Worked out nicely there.
But now I see McIlroy, and I love it because he's a spot putter like that, where he stands, looks down the line, no practice swings, and keeps the eyes on the spot, then aims over the spot and just rolls the thing over his intermediate target, like
Yeah.
Nicholas or Tiger with the intermediate target. That is sort of an aim point thing without necessarily him holding his fingers up. Am I right in my assessment there?
Yeah. I mean, AimPoint is just giving you the right target. So AimPoint just forces you to pick the right target, whether you see it or not. And so for instance, that putt you're talking about on the practice green with Trevor, if he went in there and knew it was a 5% slope, he'd say, well, this breaks 12 feet.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you see it or not. It must do that. And when you become a really good green reader / aim pointer, is you realize the ball has to break a certain amount on certain slopes. And so if you get the slope right or even close to right, it has to break like the fingers show you, even if you don't see it. I still read putts all the time where I look at it and I go, oh, God, that looks so wrong, but I know it has to do that if I've got my slope number correct and done the process correctly. So then it comes back to just, can you start the ball in line and roll at the speed you want? And my experience, most tour players are pretty darn good at hitting their line. They're just picking the wrong line.
You know what? I was listening to you there and I was feeling almost like liberated inside how, because golf is that thing where it's like the impossible game because no one can figure it out.
Yeah.
And you made a statement there. You're like, the ball has to break this amount on this percentage of slope. And I was like,
Has to.
gosh, I wrote a book one time called, Scandalously Simple, some
Yeah.
easy way to golf shots. And I'm like, the only real absolute in golf is the ball and target line. That's a given, right? Everything else,
Yeah.
there's variability. But you're
Yeah.
telling me that there's a given in percentage slope and what the ball's going to break, given speed. I love
Well,
it.
it has to. The ball only knows one thing. Is it in balance or not in balance? And so, all this looking around at terrain and rivers and oceans is all BS. The point of contact with the ground, if it's in balance, it's going to roll straight. And if it's out of balance, it's going to turn until it becomes in balance or stops. It has to. That it's as simple as that. So if I know how much side tilt the ball's rolling across, I know how much the ball has to break over a certain distance, and that's what the fingers do. It converts that side slope into mathematically what must the ball do. Minus wind, and we can calculate wind. If you get wind and some random variation, okay, but there's no magic to it. There's no magical Rays Creek effect. I've done stuff at Augusta for 15, 18 years. Every putt out there breaks exactly like it's supposed to break if you know what the slope is. And
Mm.
there's such great optical illusions. The third green out there,
I
looks
think it's nuts.
relatively flat and
I
it's
know.
4 or 5% right to left. It's
Mhm.
it's massively sloped, but it doesn't look like it. But it's massively sloped right to left. And once you understand that, you're like, oh, I get it. I know that's why my 10-footer breaks 4 feet,
Yeah.
3 feet, because it's breaking on a four.
Okay. Well, okay. Now, with holding out the fingers, right? So
Yeah.
the straighter the arm is, the slower the putt's going to be. The closer it is to you, the faster the putt is. I know
Yeah.
that. And then now, how do we situate the finger over the hole? I mean, is it on the edge of the
A
hole?
flag stick. No, it's flag stick. Put on center.
Oh, really? Simple as that, huh?
Yeah, there's lots of different theories about how to put your fingers on the, but it's just center of the hole. I mean, so it's very simple. The space you're covering with your fingers is how much the ball is going to move laterally across the slope.
Okay.
So you put your edge on the center of the hole because that's where you want the ball to finish.
Yes.
You aim on the other side. It's a little too simple, isn't it?
I love you.
A lot of
Um,
this is a lot more simple than people make it out to be.
this is also why I wanted to get you on because, again, I think there's people are missing the boat when they're going to buy the faster driver to lower their scores. I'm like, no, you might make
Yeah.
fewer. You'll make fewer big numbers if you drive it better, but those small numbers, the threes and fours, those happen because you're good at shot number 3 and 4, and a lot
Yeah.
of those come with a putter, and so that's the easiest way to lower your scores, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it when you get down to it, golf is about how fast can you get on the green in order to one putt.
Yeah.
That's it. How fast can you get to the green in one putt? So why do you hit it farther? Because that'll have me a shorter approach in theoretically, which will get me closer to the pin, which will make me more likely to one putt.
Hmm.
Same thing why you want to be in the fairway and not in the rough, because I get closer to the green on my second shot, which puts me in a better position to one putt. So it's all about accessing the green as quickly as possible and as close as you can to one putt. It's the whole game. So everything about driving distance, driving accuracy, dispersion rates, that's all about just getting closer to the pin on your approach. And then if you really want to play high level golf, you've got to be able to convert those one putts at a pretty high percentage.
Hmm. Yeah, but I would say too. I mean, I've seen countless aspirant golfers, juniors especially, where like they'll play around a golf and then they'll come off and they've had like 4 or 5 3 putts and taken 36 putts, and they wonder why they're not shooting the scores that they feel like they should be. Huh?
Right. So what I see developing golf now, when you're learning golf, learning how to keep it in bounds and not, spray it all over the place off the tee box is more important than putting.
Yes.
So it is more statistically, you want to eliminate the doubles and the triples first, and then eliminate the bogeys. And making birdies doesn't really kick in till you kind of break 80, where you're really making more than one birdie around on average. Um, but that being said, I get all these even college level D1 high level golfers who have never really spent any time on their putting because they've just spent all their time on ball striking, and suddenly they're a good D1 golfer, but they have no chance to play on tour because tour players putt and chip so much better than college golfers.
I do.
Like when you tell a college golfer what the conversion rates are on tour for putting inside 20 feet, they go, "There's no way that's right." They don't believe you. I'm like, no, this is what happens every single week, and you're converting way less than that. And they get out and they go try to play pro golf and they just get killed.
Yeah.
Men and women, both sides, and that's the big gap is putting and chipping. And so, don't neglect that when you're when you're an amateur and a junior. Yes, you need to develop your ball striking, but don't neglect your putting to the last minute.
Mm. In the back of my head, though, I do have Bob Jones, my hero, going. The key to golf is turning 3 strokes into 2. and
Yeah.
you helping people with that. Okay, I've got to ask this. We've dealt with the how to, we've dealt with how the ball reacts and the mechanics of this all, and then that's just pure slope. Help us with wind and grain and those other variables that sometimes become a part of reading putts, please.
Yeah, wind is the hardest because a steady wind's not that hard. A gusty wind's very hard because you're basically just guessing what's going to happen. My general rule with wind is by the time it's blowing about 7 miles an hour at the flag, so that by the time the flag is up and kind of waving medium speed, you've got to start thinking about wind because it will change the putt. At 20 miles an hour, balls will break uphill. Like all bets are off by 20 miles an hour, and the flag's going to be blowing pretty darn hard at that point. But it's a big factor, and if it's gusting up and down, it's just a crapshoot. Do your best to catch it on when it's not gusting.
You got to keep yourself stable first to make decent contact. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of other issues at that point, and at that point, everybody's dealing with the same problem with big gusty winds. The second tournament I ever did AimPoint on TV was the Bob Hope back in those days in 2007. And on the par three, it was probably 16 or 17. I can't remember which hole, but it was a par three, and the wind was blowing 30 that day. And all the balls were breaking uphill. And I had a wind function, thank God, because it was showing all the balls break uphill. And then during the day, as the wind went down to 10 miles an hour, they all reverted to break in the correct direction.
okay.
So that's a tough one. There is a way to adjust your aim point read where you add or subtract numbers based on wind speed and wind direction. Um, but it's probably one of the biggest questions I get. The biggest question I get is grain. The
Yeah.
second biggest question I get is dealing with wind, which
Well,
which is so
that's sort of it.
dynamic.
When it gets to that like nasty wind, to me, it's not like you're going to hold everything you stand over. It's just don't have the disastrous events on the greens and stuff. But
Yeah, and
the grain is real though.
yeah. I mean, you can make good mathematical adjustments where you're just adding or subtracting from your number. There's only two things that make you change your number, and that's wind and grain
Okay.
potentially. So wind's hard because it's not only how hard the wind's blowing, but what direction it's blowing. So is it blowing straight down slope? Is it blowing up slope? Is it blowing at an angle? Is it behind you? Is it in front of you? Those all change the dynamics of break a little bit, and it's a little harder to teach that. But we have guidelines. 20 miles an hour, you're adding or subtracting two. So if you have a 2% right to left and it's blowing 20 up slope, you're playing it straight.
Hmm, love it.
Now,
Simple.
it also does change with green speed. Wind has a bigger effect on faster greens and slower greens. So it's not quite as clean as that, but that's a really good guideline.
Yeah, but yeah, I say to people all the time, golf is the ultimate game of probability. And all you're
Yeah.
trying to do is stack the odds in your favor as much as possible over every shot. So, I mean, what you show there is you giving yourself a better chance already.
Yeah. Everything we're trying to do is reduce variability, right? We're trying
Yeah.
to reduce the margin of error. And that's full swing, that's putting, that's green reading. We're trying to get the smallest margin of error possible and keep it as small as possible for the whole round or for the whole season or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, sensational. Okay, got to give us a little insight on the gray, and then I'll let you go, please, sir.
Yeah, grain's actually very simple. People get grain wrong all the time. So we're really only going to talk about Bermuda grass. I don't do anything on bent or POA, but on Bermuda grass, um, grain generally grows downhill. It does not grow to the sun. It generally grows downhill, which everybody gets wrong because
Johnny
they've been
Miller always
told.
used to say it's going to the setting sun. I'm like, no, it grows to its life source in the water. Yeah.
Yeah, it generally grows downhill, but not always, and not always straight downhill. So this is where the problem kicks in.
Okay.
Anything kind of less than 1% slope, the grain can kind of go anywhere. There's not enough slope for it to force it downhill. And so when you get 0.5s in really flat areas, you can get grain going the wrong direction. And when you do that, you just subtract from your number. So if you get depending on the strength of the grain, so there's really heavy grain, there's light grain. Tour, it's about a 0.5%. So if you've got a one right to left and it's grain going opposite, you play a 0.5, no big deal. Heavy grain, it can be as much as 2%. So you can get a 1% right to left slope, and it's going to break the other way 1%. So you can end up aiming under the hole in certain situations where grain is really thick. At the club I teach at in Orlando, there's a couple areas that have really thick grain, and I can get a clear right to left slope, and ball breaks the other direction. But very predictable how much. If you understand that situation, it's actually not that hard at all to deal with.
But still, the middle third of the putt is where it's the biggest thing.
Always.
So it's slope wise, and then you make the accommodation for the grain direction.
Yeah, it's just like an elevation adjustment for yardage. So if you have a dead straight putt with cross grain, it's going to break.
Yeah.
Right. And so the question is, how strong is the grain? Is it a light grain like on tour? Is it a heavy Hawaii, Bermuda grain, or a South America or something like that, it's going to be 1.5, maybe even 2. You hear about guys playing Asia and they're like, ball just breaks all over the place. Well, that's super heavy, thatchy grain. But it's just an adjustment. It's really not a big. It's actually much easier to deal with than wind.
Well, that's the thing, as I listen to all of this and I now get it from the horse's mouth, the proverbial horse's mouth. I'm like, something that at the at its so at the veneer of it seems like it's in depth, but it really isn't. I mean, it's actually super simple. And if you employ it properly, you're again stacking the odds in your favor. You'd agree with that statement?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of people who learn AimPoint for me, the first thing they say is that's a lot easier than I thought.
Yeah.
And what you have to remember, this was designed for 7-year-olds. This was not designed for PhDs. The old AimPoint with the charts was very technical. AimPoint Express was designed because I had to teach 7 and 8-year-olds, and we had to get the concepts across just to get them aiming on the high side of the hole somewhere. And within a month, Brian Gay was using it at Kapalua and shot the course record with it a month later. And that's when we realized, okay, there's something going on here. It's a lot more accurate than we expected, but it's also very natural and athletic. You're feeling slope, you're facing kind of the direction the ball's going. You're sensing everything. You've got a visual aim point rather than a numeric, like the old thing would say, play 39 inches of break.
Okay. Right.
Where's 39 inches? I don't know. But when you hold up 2 fingers, it scales perfectly with distance. So I don't have to do any math or know any numbers, just aim there. And then that allows good players to be much more athletic and just focus on speed.
Brilliant. Kudos to you for developing this. And look, it's become a thing because now for the people who are interested, they can go and search for you, Mark Sweeney. But there's a cadre of AimPoint certified instructors all over the show. Yes.
Yeah, around the world, there's about 350 AimPoint instructors. You can find them pretty much in any country. There's golf. If you go to aimpointgolf.com, you can find a list of instructors there. And if you happen to be somewhere where there's no instructors close, we do online training. You can get to it at aimpointgolf.com or makeeverything.aimpointgolf.com. We've just in November started releasing some really good, not only the fundamentals, but a lot more really advanced topics that go into a lot of these things at a pretty deep level. If you're intrigued by that.
You're doing master's work, Mark Sweeney. Thank you for all you do. And thanks more importantly for joining us on the show. I really appreciate you.
Great. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be on.